Clint, first off, thank you so much for spending time with me. It's great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too, brother.
You've become a really good friend of me over the years. I think the first time we met, if I'm right, it was at a Twist Up event in Santa Monica Airport circa 2009. Does that sound right?
I do remember that meeting for sure. I still have my dog tags from that event. There were these promotional dog tags that said "Twist Up" on them. I have them somewhere, but it's hard for me to remember if that was the first time. I feel like there is no social media pre Kurty D in my mind somehow.
Oh, that's funny.
So we may have met there. That's probably a good guess. Well, I mean, I guess it depends. When did you start doing the digital family reunion events? Was that
That
shortly after
we
that?
did that. Actually, that was December of '08. So
Okay,
probably met you in '08, and then maybe '09. That Twist Up is like I think we had a really meaningful first kind of interaction.
that could be it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Because it was definitely. I believe we met wherever. When if it was twist up or prior or after. If it was twist up or prior, um, I know at that time I was an adjunct professor at USC, and I think we had did some work together, you and I, and then my colleague Karen North. I think we may have met the first time through
Yes.
Karen North.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because USC, that was the social media program, right?
Yeah, the Anarib program on online communities and students. It was, to my knowledge, it was the first graduate program offering a degree in online communities and social media.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. Well, yeah, definitely want to dig in on that topic. Thinking about just Twist Up, God bless Mike McAdin. He was the organizer of that, and I think
no
he's
doubt.
running product and design at Facebook now.
Wow.
There was a real collegiate sort of spirit in that time. It feels like Web 2.0 was sort of coming online, and we were just all kind of like right there, kind of riding the wave.
I think you're right. I mean, wonder why that was so special, but a couple of reasons. I think there weren't a lot of oldsters involved, right? So it became sort of social in that way. And I guess the in social media, we at that time and still today sort of think of it as digital media, which it is largely. But at that time, it was as much about and should be about the quality of the connections, the actual social connection to a person or a group of people through these, tech enabled conversational tools. And, increasingly, as some of those companies have gone public and needed to scale up monetization to please those shareholders, which I don't begrudge them, but sometimes the social interaction has taken a back, has been pushed on the back burner. So I love those days where it's like social media, we could be meeting at Twist Up, we could be meeting at Digital Family Reunion, we could be at a bar camp thing doing weird PowerPoints, we could be just doing a tweet up at a museum. Um, and then we could sustain that connective tissue with Facebook groups, threaded Twitter conversations, whatever it might be. I really, that was a really great era for online and offline social media.
Yeah, it was sort of like a new frontier, almost like when you go to a new school, like you go to college and there's a whole new world that opens up with new friends and new experiences.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good segue. So like, let's press rewind. You grew up in the Dakotas. You went to University of Minnesota undergrad, and then you made it your way to LA for grad school and USC. Were you always the pioneer in the family?
uh, no, I mean I'm the youngest of four, so I all respect to my siblings and to my parents, but I definitely am the one who went furthest from home, if they're in that way pioneering. I Well, it's actually I credit my upbringing in Mandan, North Dakota, with I credit that upbringing with my curiosity for different areas and different ways of living, and in part, Mandan, North Dakota was a great place to grow up. It's not a place I necessarily want to live today, and um, but one of the things that it gave me a lot of time and space to be creative and to want to seek out other places. So I remember joining like every organization I could possibly join that got me out of state to go visit something. I joined every club, every sport, everything, because I just wanted to get out and do stuff. Um, then that curiosity that was fueled out of some relative scarcity of growing up in a place without as many things going on still fuels me now, in my 40s, right? So now I'm still likely to join things that have, I guess different groups of people cross-pollinating. It's growing up in the Dakotas that got me really involved in hip hop, which I'm probably going to bring up a few times today. That sounds sort of strange, but it was because I was so hungry to talk with and learn from and meet people who were different from myself. And so I sought out and with now is probably the dominant, cultural art form of hip hop, but wasn't back in the early 80s. And so I still find myself sort of fascinated by new movements and trying to learn from them. So, that's what it's all about. That's, I guess, in that way it's pioneering, right? It's about or just being the first follower, maybe, as that ubiquitous YouTube video told us a few years ago. It's like finding other people who are really being leaders and saying, all right, well, that's cool. I'm going to put some gas behind that. Like, cause I think what Kurty D's doing is really cool. I'm curious about it. I'm going to listen. I'm going to binge listen to all of his podcasts, and I'm going to do what I can to support it. I'm going to do the same thing with 3 other people. And then I'll try to be the connective tissue between those 4 people. And maybe from that connection, something really rich and robust will grow.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and some stuff that I'm excited to dig into in the discussion. So, give our audience a little background on what you're doing professionally now, and sort of the path on how you got there.
Yeah, you got it. So in my day-to-day work, I'm a full-time employee of the Los Angeles Times, and I work for LA Times Studios. I was I believe, the first employee of LA Times Studios. It was started by the now president of the LA Times. And what am I doing professionally? I am managing our audio, video, and experiential development of LA Times Studios projects. So what that means is, let me say that differently, Kurt. Let me rewind.
Yep.
All right. Well, great. So I'm about to celebrate 5 years at the LA Times. Very excited about that. And woohoo! And toward the beginning of my tenure there, I worked with my boss, who's now the president of the LA Times, to launch LA Times Studios. And LA Times Studios is our exploration into audio, television, film, and other experiential products. Mostly what we're doing, how do I say this? All right. LA Times Studios supports journalism projects that are done in our newsroom. It also supports projects we would do with brands or organizations that want to, do their own communications, or we can be a production partner or work for hire partner. And then thirdly, some of our own original content. And it's a moving target, but we're really proud particularly of the newsroom collaborations that we've had supporting, giant hits like Dirty John, a podcast, and I could tell you a few of our other projects. But I knew I always wanted to work in media, so this is really a fulfillment of a lifelong dream. Kurt, you asked me about what it was like my life growing up in North Dakota, and my first 5 jobs. I didn't know this at the time. It's so funny. My first 5 jobs were all related to newspapers. So my first job ever was a newspaper delivery boy for the Bismarck Tribune, going door to door in 4-foot snow, delivering printed newspapers to people's homes. Then I ran my high school newspaper, and I had a column in it. So I wanted to have a column in the regular newspaper, the Mandan News, my hometown newspaper. And they said, son, you can't have you're 14. You can't have a column in the newspaper. But you could be a sports reporter, but what we really need you to do is work in the press room, because we're short on labor. So I said, great. So then I worked in the press room on the physical printing machine, collating the newspapers by hand so the ink wouldn't stick together, and I'd come home just covered in ink. That was my second job. Then I got a job as a sports clerk for the Bismarck Tribune. And then my 4th job was I started a magazine in college. I went to University of Minnesota, and Minnesota Daily at that time, or maybe still, was the largest student newspaper in the country. And I wanted a column there. And they said, freshman, we don't give you columns. I said, hell, you don't. So I started my own magazine called Speak Magazine with my friend Mike Shue. And we we had a pretty profitable little business going for several years. And then I got a job as the publisher of that paper that wouldn't hire me to be a columnist. So
Love that. Full circle.
literally,
Yeah.
this work at the LA Times is like a fulfillment of this childhood dream. I took 20 years off in between, not working in media, but I'm so excited to have the opportunity to support public service journalism with the skills I've developed outside of journalism to provide the necessary funding to fund, that important reporting.
Yeah. What do you think about the media business captured your imagination as a kid, and what's
Yeah.
still capturing your imagination now?
Yeah, my first memory of being of a newspaper or the media business was that my very first memory is that my hometown newspaper had a feature called Tiny Tot of the Week, and they would pick a kid's picture and put him in the paper. And so I showed up as the Tiny Tot in the Week once when I was a little kid. But I don't really remember that. My true memory, first memory of the media was in the comic section, in the gutter between the two rows of comics. There was an opportunity for reader submitted artwork, and I drew a picture of a robot, and that robot was printed in the paper next to Garfield and all the other cartoons, and I thought that was so cool. And then I saw my name and my age and my town in the newspaper, and other people would say, "Clint, I saw your robot in the newspaper. That's so great! Congratulations!"
Mhm.
And so the feeling that it gave me such a positive feeling to see myself and to see something I had created being visible to others and hopefully enjoyed by others, that I wanted more of that, certainly, out of vanity and self-expression and all of those values. But it also pretty quickly turned into me wanting other people to see themselves in this media and to see, because that was really fun. And I love media now is more fragmented, but I really love the idea of there being, totems in the community that used to be called newspapers, that people would that kind of create some sort of common literacy amongst all of us, and then we could have community around that. We could say, "Hey, you see the cover of the paper the other day? That's crazy what's happening," or "That's so inspiring what's happening. Let's break bread and talk about it at the barbershop or at the grocery store." And then now we have a common bond that goes outside of how we look or what we do for a living. It's really, we share a piece of information and we can talk about it. And so, at a time where water cooler moments weren't just, bingeable series on Netflix, they were actually like things that happened in our community. I loved that.
Yeah, so it's the connection of sort of narrative and story and community, you know, shared
Yeah, with a,
experience.
with a, with a piece of an ad, I guess, self-expression and representation, right? So that I I mean, again, I was a little kid, so I don't want to overstate this, but like before that, the newspaper was something that other people did that I didn't get to be a part of. I
Mhm.
show up in a newspaper. Now the newspaper is of me and I am part of it. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. That's partly also what attracts me to podcasting, both producing those and as a business side leader at the LA Times and being on a podcast like yours, Kurty D, is that um, I can see myself in your show. I feel, that, and hopefully someone else listening to this can say, "Oh, you know what? I don't see myself sometimes in podcasts. I'm going to start one, or I'm going to look
Yeah.
for opportunities to support other people's shows." Because we're really, I mean, this there really are probably some nefarious people in media, but generally media is just a reflection of what the community wants to be covered in their community, however they define community. And I love the idea of trying to have a inclusive media that as many people as possible can see themselves in it. Like I
Yeah.
got to when I was a little kid.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. I think kind of pushing fast forward to now, the second part of the question is, what are you excited about media? And as we're talking, it's interesting. Like, here I am looking at you through this, fancy camera rig, and we're recording it, and it'll get, processed and pushed out, and all that good stuff. And we're having this connection. Our relationship, it's a whole new dynamic to that.
Right.
And then, hopefully there's some insights that people can find value. And I, for one, have been loving the audio format. I have been learning so much in the last couple years from, finance and investing to a lot of stuff around the work that I'm doing with recruiting and so on and so forth. And it just feels like this long tail of information that might have been, captured or siloed in an academic environment is now just being, available to the curious.
Yeah.
And you seem to be at the vanguard of that with what you're doing at the LA Times.
Yeah, trying to be, and then as also just as a consumer, trying to support those endeavors, right, and to share those voices where I can. There are some downsides to this democratization,
Yeah,
in
let's
part,
talk about
like,
that.
well, just I mean, quickly, like, I'm not an academic scholar or anything, despite my time as a professor, but there are things that are objectively true, and sometimes that's less clear in the current media landscape because influencers and social media folks aren't necessarily beholden to the same definition of truth.
Sure.
Or and there's all there's so many voices, and sometimes it's hard to I'm all for the personalization of media to my whims. I enjoy it daily. I also sometimes might miss out on things that are really important, somewhat objectively, or would really be important for me to know about, but the various algorithms don't know that I would want to know it, right? Like, climate crisis is a really good example of that. It's like a ticking time bomb in our world, but unless you consume a lot of climate crisis information, you're not going to get fed that information, right? So if I only consume stuff about Raiders football and NBA playoffs and whatever, I'm going to get more football and NBA playoffs.
Yeah.
That's okay for my entertainment value, but I do think there are things that I would like to know. And then just, and your show, is really about positive breakthroughs and whatnot. Like, sometimes it can become a race to the bottom on negativity, because negativity can drive clicks and drive
Sure.
consumption. But I think the one of the challenges for all of us who want a better world and want to create media is to be really purposeful about reflecting the challenges of our society, which will be inherently negative at points, but also balancing that out with optimistic narratives about people overcoming adversity, about people working through these challenges and finding community and positive results, right? And so that that's frankly, like, in my day job and outside of that day job, that's where I'd like to spend more of my time than I am
Mhm.
currently.
I've
Yeah.
heard this idea of a media diet where
Yeah.
there's certain it's like junk food, right? Or food, you could eat healthy or junk out.
Yeah.
Do you have a media routine that you follow?
Not as purposeful as I once did. I first heard the term media diet years ago from a buddy of mine named Heath Rowe. I'm not sure if you know him. I think he's over at Google nowadays. And he ran this. He had a WordPress blog back in the day. I believe it was WordPress, called Media Diet. And this was like 2000, so or late 90s maybe. And he would actually blog about everything that he consumed media wise with a quick review.
Mhm.
And it wasn't he's into punk music, I'm into hip hop music. Like, we didn't have everything in common, but I love just seeing this, like, meta examination of one's own media consumption. And so while I'm not really purposeful about what I'm consuming as much as I probably should be, but I am pretty purposeful about looking back afterwards and saying, all right, what did I consume this week and how did that make me feel? Like,
Mhm.
no disrespect to Tiger King, but when I binged Tiger King, am I better off for that, or am I worse off for having invested those hours? Like, okay, on the plus side, I had this water cooler moment with other people. I got to participate in the cultural zeitgeist, and that was really enjoyable. So I don't regret that. On the other side, um, there's some possible negative narratives within that overall narrative that I don't necessarily need more of in my head. My wife and I are trying to start a family, and it kind of does reinvigorate a conversation about what kind of media I'd like to consume,
Yeah.
because Because when there's going to be a little person running around the house, I'm not going to probably watch a lot of shoot 'em up crime shows. Then I have to ask myself, well, should I be watching that now? Like, because even though there's not a little kid running around, like maybe it's not good for my brain. Um, so yeah, I mean, but my routine for media consumption, social media, I'm probably, I check my main platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at least once or twice a day. I create my own media. I do a radio show once a week, a hip hop radio show. So I'm typically promoting that on social media, which grabs me on there. And then I sort of have a rotating set of people that I follow. I can't say I put them on a list or anything like that, but I just sort of
Yeah, who
I
are
view
some
them as.
voices that
Well, I'll give
you
you an
follow?
example. I start. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
What's
you
that,
go.
Kurty?
You go.
Well, I'll just finish that thought and say that I sort of view the people I follow on social media as friends, and just like friends, I don't judge the quality of my friendships based on the frequency with which I speak to them. Frequency is one metric, but sometimes I can have a good friend like yourself that maybe we don't speak weekly or even monthly, but when we do speak, it's real and we have a great authentic conversation. And I feel like, I'd be there for you and you'd be there for me. I feel that way about some of my media relationships, that there's, obviously without the same level of personal intimacy, but like, if I'm following an account, I might just kind of ignore it for a long time, but then I'll really get into that account and then find myself sort of rapidly consuming everything that person's saying for a 2 week or 3 month stretch. And then that person's there right now. We're seeing each other metaphorically. We're seeing each other a lot and exchanging, having a lot of going out a lot and seeing each other. And then metaphorically that lapses and we're not necessarily going out anymore. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of serendipity, I think, in social media. Synchronicity. Who are some of the voices that you're really inspired by and that you think are relevant and are worth following, even if you don't agree with them?
Yeah. Great question. Who are okay, let me think about it for a second.
I see Amy Klobuchar is following you on Twitter.
Oh, is she really? That's wild. Yeah, they got that Minnesota connection right there. I'll share just randomly kind of 3 creators that come to mind. How about that?
Yeah.
They're all very different. So Kurty D, here are 3 people that I'm kind of following on social that right now I'm pretty jazzed about. One of them is a rapper that you may have heard over the years past, named Stick or Stickman. He was one half of the group Dead Prez, who had a huge hit called Hip Hop several years ago. Well, Stick and his wife, who is a nutritionist and big advocate for a vegan diet and healthy living, they talk about those issues around a healthy family, but through the lens of being hip hop. And so, as someone who self-defines or aligns with the hip hop culture, I find getting this really helpful information for my brain and body from Stick is more palatable than getting it from whatever other source others might be getting it from. And so I really enjoy it. And then so much so, like Stick, his recording career has shifted. His music has always been really politically conscious and otherwise conscious. But the last 2 albums, I believe, are called The Workout and The Workout 2, and they're exercise hip hop albums. He coined a term called fit hop.
Love
And
it.
his Instagram and other social media stuff really underscores that commitment that he's made in his lifestyle. So
yeah, I'm looking him up right now. He looks pretty fit, and it's Stickman, STIC.MAN.
yeah, and on Instagram he's just Stick,
Yeah.
STIC.
Yeah,
And
cool.
but I love it, really motivational stuff. But again, without some of the, again, I don't mean to denigrate anyone else, but like without some of the corniness of some of the motivational stuff, or without the kind of hustle culture, you're not enough tone that I sometimes hear. I like Stick because he seems to accept his fans and followers where they are, but trying to get them to a healthier, better place.
Yeah,
So
cool. Love
I
that.
love Stick. Another one is a friend of mine named Baby Luck. Her real name's Brittany Ballard. She's a performing artist too, as an EDM artist, but the thing I want to big up is a email newsletter she does on Substack called The Overshare. And the Overshare is great, man. She overshares. She's sharing all the details about her kids, pooping in the house, and about challenges she has in her marriage, and about her challenges as a self-employed creative person. And she's sharing a lot of other people's vulnerability and their vulnerable art as well. I just think I really dig what she's doing. She's relatively active on social media, but really active on that Substack account. And it's a really good newsletter follow. That's different from the norm. It's you'll be getting in early if you check her out.
Well, I'm literally just subscribed.
Nice. And then one more person I'll share with you. I live here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and this is a woman I know from Oakland who goes by Spesh or Special. And I met her through a group I'm a part of podcast enthusiasts and professionals who meet once a month called Pod Recognize Pod. So she runs this really great group. And she has a Twitch show called Special Says, which is like everyone on Twitch, she's DJing, but she's DJing music videos. So there's a visual component that's pretty hot. And she has a podcast called Special Delivery. I really dig her approach to life and music and content creation. And she has a little bit of that spirit, Kurty D, that we were talking about earlier, where she's trying to shine and trying to get her stuff out there, but she's really about the community. I mean, this group she runs, Pod Recognize Pod, she's just giving freely of resources that she spent a lot of time putting together and offering them up to the community to benefit from. And I love that spirit. And I think the world of her.
I'm having trouble finding her online. How do I
Oh,
spell
really? Well, special on Instagram, she's at Special Says _.
Okay.
She has a few different identities for her different projects.
Special Says. Got it.
Yeah, she's really cool.
Click the app to check out the Special Delivery podcast. I'm going to sign up here.
Yeah, she's real cool, and just not, again, like that beautiful combination of working hard and aggressively trying to build out a career, but also generous in doing so, right? Yeah, and on Twitter, she's the same name, but without the underscore.
Yeah, here on our site, podcast resources, music resources, specialsays.com, video resources. Cool. This will be fun to dig into. I mean, this is part of the theme of the Kurty D Show is learning out loud, where I get to learn out loud with the audience and with my guests. So I love it. Mission accomplished. So let's see here. We've covered quite a bit of ground already. Maybe shifting gears, the core theme of the Kurty D Show is humanizing success. And I've had some issues in my life that I'm increasingly candid about, thanks to my wife for encouraging me to be brave. And from some of my challenges, like with my hearing stuff, and you may or may not know that I helped my dad get sober when I was in college, and it's been an incredible family journey there. And I've come to believe that the bigger the breakdown, the bigger the possibility for breakthroughs. That principle has been held true in my life. And having said that, what are some of the hardest challenges personally or professionally that you've had to face and overcome, Clint, that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. I say I'm still kind of going through that process. I guess it's an ongoing process, right? To be able to mine through that story and to extract those learnings. But for me, we spoke a little bit about my upbringing in North Dakota. I'm going to go a little more specifically on that. So I grew up on a 7-acre kind of mini farm in a small town, outside of a small town. And there were probably 5 other houses within walking distance from my home. And I don't want to overstate it, but I guess I was probably low-level bullied living there. Right? I think most of the other households were related in some way or another. We were not. They all had siblings of the same age. My siblings were 10 plus years older than me, so they weren't around. And I remember feeling sort of lonely and isolated a lot as a kid in that environment. And so the formula I came up with, I guess out of necessity, was to always have really wide social networks so that I would rarely feel that way again. I didn't want to enter rooms in the future where I didn't know people. I wanted to be able to go anywhere, anytime, any place, and either know people or have a first degree connection or have a big enough toolkit of story and skills and affiliations that I could always find a friendly, if you know what I mean. And
Mm.
so that was a challenge I've had, and my way of overcoming it. But I don't know, as I entered my 40s a few years ago, I think I realized that even my solution was somewhat limiting because I was defining my value based on those affiliations and those relationships. Like,
Mm.
and what I wish for myself moving forward, my intention is to continue to get the best part of community and interdependent relationships and all of that I'm really proud of from my life to date. But I also want to be a little more comfortable in my own skin to be more independent when that's appropriate. And um and so whatever that may be, as a future parent or as an entrepreneur, or all the different hats that I or one might wear in their own life, I want to be able to I want to do, life is short and I want to go make an impact, and I want to do it in the ways that I believe need to be done. And maybe for the last 20 years, I'm really proud of my accomplishments, but it's often been in support of someone else's dream, someone else's vision.
Mhm.
And I think that stems from my insecurity around not wanting to be alone or isolated. So
Yeah,
if I can be a little more comfortable with independence, knowing that I have a safety net of love around me, and having that full security, what's stopping me from being, there really shouldn't be anything stopping me from being a little bit more actualized and contributing more of my unique gifts and un, unfettered, right?
sure. Well, I think this conversation is that, though. You're being really candid and honest, and
Yeah.
that's all beautiful and perfect. And I do that makes a lot of sense too. I feel like there's a principle that our sort of our pain gives us our power, right?
Yeah.
If you can face it and get through it, and or even just as you described, it was a coping mechanism, which makes a lot of sense. I think I feel very similar to you in that way.
Yeah. How so? I mean, I don't know if I can
Well,
interview you
similar. I
back,
mean, I
but yeah.
grew up. I had you know, part of my story is I grew up. I didn't have ear canals, and when I was young, it was just really hard to hear, and you know, that was a challenge, and you get made fun of and stuff, and
Yeah.
um, I had to do some pretty serious speech therapy for a long time too, and that was a lot of work, and I think very similar to you, it just it gave me the gift of having to learn, as I think as a um, coping mechanism, how to have woo and how to make friends, and
Yeah.
like all that kind of good stuff, and
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and
so
you don't regret that at all, right? Because that's such a great part of your of who you are. But it's nice to have. I'll speak for myself. It's nice to have a larger array of tools available. So when this community friendly guy thing that is inherently who I am now, it's the person I am and have become. It's not always the tool I want to use. That's if
sure,
that's my screwdriver, like sometimes I need my hammer, and
yeah,
I sometimes haven't flexed these other tools as much as I would like. And so I like, just you sharing your experience with your father and with your own health and whatnot. The that that's so relatable. Like I already feel like 3x more connected to you over the last 30 seconds over I did over the previous 2 minutes. You know what I mean? It's just a thing. The story I often use is that superheroes are really cool right now, DC Comics and Marvel and everything. Well, the only thing that's really interesting about those superheroes are their vulnerabilities. Like Superman is perfect without kryptonite, and he's pretty boring, honestly. He's good looking. He flies around. He can do everything. He has perfect vision. Like, it's really the weaknesses of Superman that make him a compelling character. The fact that he, lost his grandparents, that he was orphaned as an alien on a foreign land. That's what makes him interesting. It isn't his special skills, right? And I think that's kind of true for all of us. It's often the lack of something and the grit and determination and enthusiasm required to get through that adversity, to overcome those circumstances, is what makes all of us special, and it's the most interesting things about us.
Yeah, I really, what resonates with me, what you're saying, is sort of this distinction where sort of what your superhero gift is, or kind of this community guy, but then to be able to have the discernment that I think comes with age, and also, you think, if you're uh, those of us that are, people out there that are gifted with being more objective, younger, just taking a step back and looking at, like, what is the right or approach here, what's a good strategy, and it sounds like, that sounds very mature and grown up, to be able to recognize, like, what your strengths are, and then how to sort of develop other skills.
Yeah.
One of the things that this idea, since we're kind of getting into some philosophy, is a Japanese concept of ikigai, spelled
Mm-hmm.
Ikigai, and it's a
Yeah, I've got that
concept.
JPEG saved on my desktop.
Yeah, it's great. I just love spreading the word about ikigai. It's it translates roughly to reason for being, and
Mm,
it's a concept referring to having a direction or a purpose in life and providing a sense of fulfillment, and in
that's
a path which people can take actions. And I think that's really part of my mission with the show, is that get as many people to discover and actualize their ikigai as possible, because I feel that that makes a world that works for more people. And I think there's so many, part of the problem with culture is that there's a pressure to conform or fit in, and the market rewards those that are brave and willing to, be different. And Steve Jobs, tapped into that with Think Different. And all the brands, the best brands, all know that, right? Like,
right. Just
you
do
want,
it, etc. Yeah.
yeah, what is it about you that's unique and special? And I think that what I found in the world is that there are three things that, if we have these three things, the universe will respond or conspire on our behalf. And it's one, clarity of objective, clarity of objective. Two, enthusiasm or conviction around objective or intention. And then three, that the objective and intention serves the greater good, that it's not self-serving.
Wow,
And
that's
that
great.
when we have these three things, that things tend to just line up. And when I've in the high points of my career, whether it's city sourced or working at Esri, or even now here at Hunt Club, those items are there. And I think, to your point about, like, that distinction of knowing what your gift is naturally, but then also knowing, like, what are some skills you could add to your tool belt.
Yep.
So
And that service mentality piece connects with me too. I think, well, one, for just, I think having that mentality of service is not only better for the universe and just in terms of making the world a better place, it's also sort of selfishly a nice route for a sustainable life and career. And what I mean is, um, what if I'm a social media, if social media is my trade or podcast creation is my trade, well, those things may or may not fall in and out of vogue. But the deeper benefits that of connection that I'm focused on through those parts of my career, that is never going away. Humans are going to see connection. It's inherent, and humans are going to connect seek connection and meaning through story, no matter what
Yes.
happens.
Yes.
So if that's where I choose, so I've done a few different things. I've ran some ad agencies. I've worked at some big agencies. I've worked in progressive politics, and now I'm at a big media company. And I started my career in journalism, but I don't feel like my approach has really been that different in any of the jobs. I think it's always been about like, how do I make some cool stuff that people are going to enjoy or learn from, and then we'll find a way to monetize it one way or another, either through advertising or it'll be from a brand or whatever. And at the end of the day, it's just about how do we create stuff that that's going to create, that feeling in the belly of like, I really like this. I think other people are going to like it too. And, I probably have more work to refine that mission, but that's the closest, I'm improvising here with you, but that's like getting to my ikigai, right? And I think I have more work I can do there. But the more I focus on that service piece, it kind of gets me out of my head around some of the stuff that was holding me back too, like the badges and affiliations. You're like, oh, I teach at this school and I work at this big media company. Well, those are cool, but that's not who I am. Like, I'm going to be awesome. I was awesome before I worked at the LA Times. I'm going to be awesome someday when I don't work at the LA Times, right?
Sure.
But it's hard to remember that sometimes when you're in the moment and we get so tied up in these affiliations. So if I can focus on the service and my life mission, that way, my 5 years plus at the LA Times is contributing to that mission. My appearance on the show today is hopefully contributing to that overall calling that I'm trying to heed. The thing I do next, some entrepreneurial thing I may do in the future, I want it to, the more and more it's honed to that sense of service, it actually helps me get past some of the self-limiting behaviors and thoughts that have sometimes held me back.
Yeah. Yeah. I that makes sense. What it came to mind when you were sharing that is like, there's like a vision for, some people are able to achieve in a life. And, um, I got to work for some interesting people in my career where they were very
Yeah.
clear about what they wanted to achieve. And then over time, the mission can change, like the job can change, the role, but you're still heading in this direction of an overarching vision, which that seems to line up with Maslow's hierarchy and sort of that top of the pyramid being self transcendence or actualization and with social impact.
Yeah, I learned one of the guys who's had a huge influence in my life in this regard is a good friend of mine, Mike Bonifer. You may know him as well from the social media scene in LA back in the day. So Mike Bonifer combines a lot of interesting interests and entertainment and improv and business strategy. And I think he adapted this from the world of improv, but he speaks really eloquently about the differences between objectives and outcomes. And it's a beautiful thing to have an objective that guides your behavior and gives you a sense of focus to what you're trying to do, right? Like, and he uses the word game to describe this. So the game we're playing today is, let's do a podcast that's recorded on Squadcast, and then we'll edit some version of it and stick it out and people and see if anyone resonates. That's the game.
Yep.
But the positive outcomes, and we're going to accomplish this game, right? we're in it. I can see the finish line. We're going to win. This is great game. Good job. There are other positive outcomes that might differ from the focused objective, right? We could go on to do business together. Someone could hear this and do business with one or both of us. We could decide this could create a new chapter in our relationship, or maybe we'll get a vacation home together and split it and spend time with our spouses together. Who knows, right? The possibilities are nearly unlimited, and the possible positive outcomes are nearly unlimited. But there really is one area of focus to the game that we're playing, right? And so I find that to be really liberating for me as I go through these spaces. Like, all right, there's an objective to this, but I'm trying to balance being singularly focused on an objective with the serendipity and great things that can come from mining other positive outcomes of the effort. And I think too often people fall one way or the other. People with a desire to stay free, which I can relate to, they want to not have an area of focus and just dabble in lots of things. That might be okay, but that can potentially be unfulfilling down the road. And then there's people who are singularly focused on one thing, and that's beautiful. They may find material success in that area, but then if that something happens outside of their control in that area, they're sort of left naked and exposed. So I think the best thing is to find that balance.
Yeah, that gets into a whole discussion around, synchronicity or luck and being able to recognize it and know when to stay the course or when to shift. But that's another conversation for another day.
All right.
Kind of wrapping up, keep looking at the clock here. So one of the kind of a fun question, kind of a general human interest question. So what's something that the world doesn't know about Clint that we wouldn't know if I wasn't too rude to ask?
Ooh, all right. Well, I'm a little bit of an open book. So there's not too many super unknown things. Well, what's something the world doesn't know about you that we wouldn't know if I wasn't Georgia?
It could even be something funny like your favorite cartoon or
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, okay, cool. Like one that comes to mind, but I do talk about this publicly. But like one thing most people don't know about me is that I was a mascot at the University of Minnesota. So I wore the Goldie Gopher. I donned the Goldie Gopher prestigious furry costume and wore it to many a sporting event. And again, that was just. It's probably not too surprising to people who know me well, like you. But
I didn't know that. Yeah, that's new information.
it's new information. Breaking news here on the Kurty D Show. But it's just I did that because I thought it would be. I like bringing joy to people's lives through a shared communal media experience, and that was like a live performance that was fun, right? Like
Well,
the women's volleyball game might be boring, but I'm gonna make sure these kids are entertained by doing head spins and funny moves in a furry costume, and I found enjoyment in bringing that enjoyment to other people. So that's kind of how I roll generally. Like I rapped and sang my vows to Bobby Brown every little step in a gold tuxedo at my wedding 5 years ago.
oh my God,
Um,
amazing.
I'm always trying to. I mean, it's for my own personal amusement primarily, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't love the response of the karaoke crowd. Right? Like it's fun. It's fun to be participating in a series of wholesome, peaceful, loving, fun shenanigans with other people. That to me is what this human experiment is all about, and I want more of it.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to your insight around the game being a game, and it's essentially it's an expression of play. And
Yeah, that's right.
what so you love music. If you could magically have any band or group at any venue, who would it be and where?
Hmm. All right, all right. If I could magically have any band anywhere, I would have Sly and the Family Stone in their prime somehow in my sister-in-law and brother-in-law's home backyard in Oakland, California. That's where Sly
Oh,
Stone is from. And I've been thinking a lot about Sly Stone lately. I've been thinking about how we honor people before they pass and give people their flowers while they're still living. And Sly Stone's one of those musicians that like no one talks about or is rarely discussed in regular day. Someday soon, sadly, Sly Stone will probably pass away. He's quite aged, and instantly for the next 6 months, everyone's going to be a giant Sly Stone fan. I would like Sly Stone to know, if you're listening today, Sly Stone, you've had a huge impact on my life, and you should get your flowers now and every day that you're on this earth. And so, anyway, and I love to see that in a backyard in Oakland with my beautiful nieces, Toki and Jumi, dancing around, having a good time.
oh, I love that. Yeah, growing up, my folks played a lot of Sly Stone, Family Affair. We'd roll it on a Sunday and drive around. It's a family
Yes, that's
affair.
beautiful. It
So
would be a
good.
family affair for sure. You're invited.
Final question. How can our audience be of service to you?
Oh, great question. Well, I love connecting with people per our conversation for serendipitous. Awesome. So you can find me on any social media channels at Clint Schaff, CLINTSCHAFF. That's my first and last name. And I got a big move ahead. My wife and I are relocating to Northwest Arkansas in support of her work. and that opens up a whole nother set of games and experiences and opportunities for me. So if you know anyone who's doing business in Northwest Arkansas or lives there or spends time there, or is open to working, collaborating remotely with me on any number of projects with the LA Times or with me individually, send them my way. Send him or her my way, because there's a period of great creation coming in with me and with my family. We're pregnant with a child. We're what's the right word? We're expecting a child later this year, and we're moving to a new place and building a house. It's a fertile time for creation for me, and I want to create as many things as I can while this energy is around me.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, congrats with everything. Good luck on the move, and so appreciate our friendship. And it's so good to talk to you, Clint. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurty D, man. It's really been a pleasure catching up.